Good morning, Lynda. Good morning, Richard. Thank you very much for being here. For our audience, Lynda Fernandez is the CEO of Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors, and Richard Haggerty is the CEO of OneKey MLS. And thank you both for being here as a part of Leading the Way podcast. This is a very, very important conversation that we would like to have with you for our audience, which are both realtors and general public. So a lot has been happening in the market lately. There have been a lot of issues, there have been a lot of conversations, both on the record and off the record, about commissions, about NAR, about MLS, the local associations or the local boards. There has been a lot of movement or discussion in the market. So question for you, Richard, let me get you started off with this one. With reference to all that's happening, what are some legal and ethical changes or adaptations that you would want to talk about that involves both realtors, associations, and the MLS?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, Anthony. There has been a lot of discussion in the press about the NAR settlement that occurred this year. In terms of how it relates to the MLS, really there are only a couple of key items that affect the MLS, but they are important changes. The first, and the one that I think is getting the most attention, is any reference to cooperative compensation had to be removed from the MLS. Prior to the settlement date, you could have what cooperative compensation was being offered to any form of cooperating agent, and that all had to be removed in August of this year. The second change that is also obviously getting a lot of discussion, as it should, is the requirement that there must be written agreements between buyers and the clients that they are working with. That is, some firms have required that as a matter of practice. The MLS now has to enforce that as a rule that any participating broker, any participating agent of OneKey MLS must have a written agreement with the buyer they're working with. And usually that is going to be a buyer-broker, buyer-agent relationship, and it has to have a written agreement. From my perspective, that is a very positive change for the consumer because it creates transparency. It gives greater understanding as to what the agent's bringing to the transaction, to the relationship, and what the consumer can expect from the agent. So those are really the two key changes that are affecting the MLS.
Mm-hmm. Lynda, what's your take on that with ethical and legal issues that are possibly going to affect the realtors as a whole involving the local board or the local association?
Well, I agree with Richard that it is a positive change for consumers, and I think as an association we handle professional standards, so that would be something that we would be able to address. And we also released forms that will help our members if they so wish, because they're free to use whatever forms they like. NYSAR has forms, we have forms, their brokerages may have forms that comply with the settlement, and that would provide them forms that they can use with their buyers. And so I think in many cases, from what I've been hearing, that change has not been as big or as impactful as people expected. I think they're navigating it well, and I do think it's good for the consumer.
Thank you. So the 2024 settlements, Richard, has been the talk of the town, as we said earlier on, and also how do you think that settlement actually trickles down and impacts the homeowner or a potential homeowner or a renter who wants to be a homeowner?
I think that there are two things that really have to happen. I think realtors have to be able to articulate their value proposition more effectively. And I think that's always been the case, but I think there's going to be a hyper-focus now on conveying that value proposition. I think on the list side, where agents were dealing with seller clients. That's always been a bit of an easier task on the part of the agent. The requirement now that agents must have written agreements with their buyer clients, I think that has become especially important now, where that value proposition has to be first and foremost what is articulated. Lynda mentioned forms, and that's been a big transition because the forms have changed substantially to deal with compensation, or whether cooperative compensation is being offered at all. And same on the buy side, where the buyer agent must discuss compensation with their prospective clients. So you've really got to walk through those forms and explain exactly what they mean, and really create an assurance on the part of the agent to the prospective buyer client that you are the expert, that you are there to help guide them through this extremely important process. So that value proposition, first and foremost, I think is key, and I think that's really a bit of a change, especially on the buy side, where a lot of agents prior to the settlement may have been a little bit on autopilot. But again, I think this is going to benefit the consumer. And what is important, and this is where I think the associations especially are going to play a vital role, is education. Education is going to be the key.
Right. Great segue to, I know Hudson Gateway has been pretty strong in serving the realtor family across the region. So with this new change and modifications to practices, what trainings and initiatives have been done in the past to really educate and bring our membership to the forefront of what's happening?
So I think I'm a firm believer, personally and professionally, in that every challenge brings an opportunity, and I think that's exactly what is happening with this. It's part of our mission and our purpose to empower our members to be successful in their business and in their communities. And so this has given us the opportunity to show our value as an association, and also to help our members show their value to consumers. And we are providing resources in terms of a dedicated landing page, for example, just for the settlement, that gives them access to everything they need on a local, state, and national level. We are enhancing our communications generally, but also in particular with the settlement, to ensure that our members have the latest information as it's released from whichever source. We've hosted probably over 50, 60 classes, webinars, and informative sessions on the settlement and the implementation of the settlement, and we'll continue to do so. We are changing our education, our offerings, our formats, looking at technology to better serve our members in the future with hybrid programming. And so we're just focused on listening to our members, which is an important part of communication, and figuring out what is it that they need before they even know they need it. And sometimes, in some cases, after the facts, if they feel they have a particular need, then we're also providing resources in that regard. So we're constantly emailing, having webinars, having info sessions, having classes, providing electronic resources to ensure that they're informed. And as I mentioned before, we released our local forms, but also have available options as to which forms they can use.
So there's been a lot of webinars and training and seminars and discussion about forms and new classes, et cetera, which is very helpful, much needed. The question that I have for both of you, and Lynda, maybe you should take this on, is realtors feel overwhelmed by all the change in the industry. There's a lot that's happening. If you pull back and look at the settlement or whatever changes that are there, the common term that you hear is, how's it going? I'm fatigued, I'm tired, I'm overwhelmed, I'm confused. How do we rewrite that narrative as an association and as an MLS? How do we take that frustration or lack of learning? Because you're putting all the tools out there, but they have to come and feast at the table to really learn and understand. What's your comment on that with all this frustration and the anger that's out there?
So I think with any change, there is difficulty in adapting to that change, and those of us who are more equipped to adapt will do better. I think for some, it's not necessarily that they don't have the resources or the information or the ability to grasp that or understand it. It's more just a reaction to the change. I do think as an association, we need to facilitate the flow of information. And that's why, for example, we've hired a new VP of Marketing, Communications, and Events who hit the ground running right before the implementation of the settlement and is working on diversifying our communications channels, making sure that members have different ways to access the information. A big part of what I've done in coming to HGAR is focusing on meeting members where they're at and not the other way around. And so with that approach, with that perspective, I think we can do more in terms of how we present the information, how we facilitate the information, and ensuring that different people learn different ways and can grasp information in different ways. But we are definitely committed to using this as an opportunity to show our value as an organization that empowers their members to be more successful.
Thank you. I think you hit it on the head which segues to Richard on the same question about dealing with frustration with individuals and realtors as a whole. How do we quench the thirst?
So I think we have to also realize that sometimes we're not going to be able to quench that thirst. Real estate's not easy. And I think sometimes we've tried to convey to consumers, we're going to make it easy for you. And certainly good agents know how to facilitate even difficult transactions as seamlessly as possible. But we should, again, I'm going back to value proposition, never diminish our value proposition and the importance of what we bring to the table. Mm-hmm. It's our expertise. It's our knowledge. Really, those are the two biggies. Mm-hmm. And there's no way of making that easy, Anthony, from my perspective, if you're not willing to embrace the change, as Lynda's saying. An agent has to understand that they're taking on a lot of responsibility when they're representing the interest of consumers in a real estate transaction. This is their opportunity to step up the game, step up their game. And from my perspective, the key is going to be the broker owners and managers. So it's going to be you. And I know you've got tremendous resources for your agents. And really, we can't make the decisions on behalf of broker owners. So Lynda's talked several times about forms. Well, we've got to be very clear, and we are, at the MLS level, that agents can't make individual decisions about what forms they're going to use. That's the decision of the office of the broker owners. Mm-hmm. Right. So at the end of the day, we can bring everybody to the table, but as you said, we can't make them eat unless they want to. And that's really going to be the key. This is really a relationship involving everybody who's a part of the transaction. And we can only provide the tools and deliver them in ways that are creative, that are consistent, that, whether it be email, whether it be webinars, a whole way of delivering the information. But at the end of the day, the agents, the offices have to assume the responsibility of embracing the changes, embracing learning, embracing how they can continue to provide top-level service to consumers.
Thank you. So one follow-up questions to that is, how is OneKey adapting to the new environment, to everything that's happening out there?
Sure.
And you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yep.
And then I'll come to you, Lynda, on a different question.
Yeah, just as Lynda has talked about the Hudson Gateway Association creating new ways of trying to convey information, OneKey's doing the same thing. We've launched a brand new knowledge base, is what we've called it. I like to refer to it basically as an encyclopedia or a dictionary that our OneKey members can use to easily get information. So information about the settlement, information relating to all of the products and services that we offer that can help them succeed, so that they're not trying to find a needle in a haystack. So that's something that we've just launched, and actually we launched it in tandem with the settlement because we figured that was going to be the most important information we could provide right now. We're also launching a new enterprise site or corporate site to also make it easier to access information. So the key is really trying to make it as seamless as possible for us to provide the information to our members to help them succeed. So that's really our focus.
Mm-hmm. So, Lynda, let's switch gears here a little bit. How HGAR has always been on the cutting edge of providing tools and resources as a home base for realtors. As a broker owner on the outside, I see that this is an institution that really equips and empowers and enables realtors to be successful as a whole. So with that being said, there has been an evolution of legal standards and ethical standards, especially within the industry. What is Hudson Gateway doing to keep our keep our members informed, updated, and to help them learn about the evolving standards?
So again, part of that is education and continuing education courses. We're also looking at more programming that's not necessarily continuing education, but it's cutting edge information. We listen to what the members are seeing or experiencing in order to craft our offerings. We are also working on, as I mentioned earlier, communication channels. We have our Real Estate in Depth. We launched a new digital platform as of January of this year. We sunsetted the print version of the newspaper based on cost, but we have a new platform that is extremely sophisticated, and we are working to elevate it and to not only make it a member service, a free member service, but also to position it as the voice of real estate in the Hudson Valley and New York City. We launched a new website with a new member portal to elevate the member experience and to make things more accessible and more understandable by our members. And so we're using all of those techniques, including our new approach to communications marketing as a way to reach more members and to advance professionalism, which is one of our core services. It includes education, but it includes everything that will make our realtors more professional and ethical and compliant.
Great.
Could I piggyback on that?
Sure.
Because I think it's a great segue to the fact that we have to educate our members, but there's also got to be accountability. So we've recrafted our rules to make sure they're compliant with the settlement terms of the settlement. And there has to be a clear understanding that I touched upon the fact that there has to be a written agreement between the broker and the consumer that they are working with, and as I'm talking about the buyer, our buyer consumer. And if a realtor or a member of the MLS is going to willfully ignore that requirement, there's got to be accountability.
Right.
So with the Code of Ethics, there's a hearing process. With the enforcement of the OneKey MLS rules, there's a hearing process. And both participants of the MLS as well as fellow realtors can avail themselves of either the association or the MLS, depending upon the type of complaint, to file that complaint and know that there will be some form of accountability once you go through a due process hearing. So I think everybody needs to understand that there's got to be buy-in to this new world that we are living in. And so it doesn't just stop at education. There's also got to be that accountability component.
I agree with Richard, and I think that's a big issue pre-settlement because members will contact you and tell you that something is wrong, but they won't file the complaint. And so that's very important. And I also think it's good to add at this point that members need to be compliant with the settlement, and that they should not try to circumvent the settlement in any way. That can't be stressed enough.
Yeah, um, uh, very good point, Lynda. But I'm going to talk about the pink elephant in the room, which is clear cooperation. I know there's a lot of discussion about that right now.
It's pink.
The pink or the blue elephant? What do you call it? A purple elephant? But yeah, and there is a lot of discussion, especially in the media and the different articles that are out there. What is your transparent gut feeling and your thoughts on clear cooperation, both as an association and an MLS? Richard?
So I'll tackle it first, since it's an MLS requirement, and it's an NAR mandated policy right now. And NAR, I think, is looking at it. And so I'm not going to address the specifics of it, except express my personal opinion that I do think clear cooperation benefits the consumer. But I will talk in general about cooperation, and from my perspective, the importance of cooperation and how it benefits the consumer. The real estate industry really embraced cooperation going back into the late 1800s. This is not a new phenomena. And it's to the credit of real estate professionals, recognizing that if they cooperated with each other, they would benefit and the consumer would benefit. So instead of the consumer having to go to multiple sources to try to get data, there would be one centralized source, or even multiple centralized sources, but you wouldn't have to replicate searching the internet. Now I'm talking today, obviously,
Sure, yeah.
For every individual firm's listing inventory. So there's a clear benefit to the consumer, and that's what we have to focus on. All of our efforts really have to be able to demonstrate that they are pro-consumer. And I think when it comes down to cooperation, it is, from my perspective, the ultimate foundation of the multiple listing service as we know it. I also think it's the foundation of the Realtor Code of Ethics. I mean, you look at the two key articles from my perspective, it's Article 1 and Article 3, and which really establish cooperation and communication. And if I were to say, this is where we really have to take a stand, it's at cooperation, because I really truly feel it is of such vital importance to the consumer.
Right. Yeah. You really connected the code of ethics. I was going to talk about that with pro standards and the association. But before we delve into that, Lynda, your take on clear cooperation and how it connects with the association work in serving the members.
Well, I completely agree with Richard. And I will just add that the fact that when given my past life in Global, a lot of what we were asked to do with Global was to come and present how we do business in the US. And in particular, that aspect of having to reach out to individual companies or brokers to find out what's available. So the fact that the majority of the world wants to mirror what we're doing here speaks volumes of how effective and necessary it is. And I also obviously think whatever we do that is pro-consumer is pro-agent and helps our market. And again, we handle professional standards, so we have to respond when there's a complaint or a violation of any of these things. But I personally do think it's the best policy, because it also, I think it also, it's not just pro-consumer, but I think it provides options for first-time buyers, for low-income buyers, and really helps us achieve that dream of homeownership and allows accessibility to homeownership to more prospective buyers and sellers.
The Richard mentioned, I think it was you mentioned pro standards or code of ethics. Have you seen an increase in the number of pro standards complaints or possible?
Not as of right now, no.
So the accountability part that we talked about the call to complain, but no action to follow up,
Or to ask questions, but not an increase in complaints.
Okay, questions. Okay, so so going back to the violations that in the agent world, we talk about violations. You know, somebody's not giving us access, somebody's not showing it to us, somebody's not putting the information as they should, or they're giving us a runaround and things of that sort. It all comes back to agent behavior. You know, the DNA of a realtor. Or do you think all of this is going to make it muddle that even more, or is this an opportunity for us to pivot and learn and do something good for our industry? Because there are some who are taking this and circumventing it for their own advantage and nefariously. You know, so what would be the call to action from an MLS and from an association standpoint? Don't twist it. Follow the rules. Don't circumvent the policy that's out there. What would be your words of wisdom to the audience about doing the right thing?
So let's talk about the reality that we're dealing with. The National Association of Realtors settled this lawsuit for, I believe, the final total was $418 million. That protected MLSs, associations, and the large majority of real estate firms, except those firms that were doing in a certain year over $2 billion worth of transactions.
Right.
Then those firms had to settle for very big bucks. And if you total all of that settlement money, it's a very big price tag. If real estate companies and agents are going to take the risk of not following the terms of the settlement, then I think that's very foolish, because they're ignoring the immediate reality that led to this to begin with. And they're also going to ignore the fact that the MLSs and associations, but especially the MLSs, have signed off on the terms of the settlement, which means we are obligating ourselves to enforce the terms of the settlement. So I don't see how the risk is worth it, either prior to the settlement or post-settlement. And even though I'm in the MLS world now, I was in the association world for decades, and I'm a firm believer in the importance of the code of ethics, both as a training tool, but also as an accountability tool. I also think, though, the buck stops with the association, the MLS, to a certain degree, but the buck also stops at the desk of the broker owners, because they set the tone. They're the ones who are also going to be held to more a liability perspective. They're representing the firm. They own the firm. And I think they have to recognize the importance of creating mechanisms within their offices to ensure compliance. Because everybody's at risk, and it makes no sense to increase that risk. We know what the parameters are. Let's live within the parameters. For example, we know we can't mention compensation in the MLS. As Lynda says, don't do it. Don't get creative and try to find workarounds. We know we have to have written agreements between agents and their buyer clients. Well, that's not gonna hit our desk unless somebody files a complaint. But the broker has to have mechanisms in place to make sure that the agents are complying with that, so that they're reducing their firm liability.
Thank you, Lynda.
So I think, to your question, I don't think it's going to change the way people react to rules. I think, agree with everything Richard has said, but I think it will be the same. And it's basically a do the right thing. And obviously, like he said, there are mechanisms that the broker can implement. We can respond to complaints when they're filed. So again, if you see something, say something. Or file a complaint, don't just say something. But I don't think it'll change. I think maybe the types of complaints will change. The types of things we have to consider will change. But I think agents, realtors have to abide by that strict code of ethics and do the right thing.
Yeah. To both of your point about upholding the code of ethics is very crucial, where our industry is drifting especially. No circumventing the law. No, we got to follow the policies and we got to follow the mandate because it's our industry as a whole. So let's not throw it under the bus. But before, I have two more questions for you. Both of you have been in your positions for about a year and a half now, and both of you came from large associations with a wealth of experience under your belts. And this NAR mandate hit you and the association. I'm sure nobody expected this. There's nothing predictable about what happened. So the question is, how have you pivoted your leadership in leading OneKey MLS and the association? What partnerships or what collaborations or what tools are in your arsenal right now to move forward with marching with this new change?
So I think I used this analogy at the leadership summit I was still working for the Miami Association of Realtors during the pandemic. And I think if you lived through the pandemic, you should be able to pivot at this point, even if it's unexpected. And I don't think this was totally unexpected. And I think leaders like Richard and I were probably thinking about we should always be showing value. We should always be helping members show value to their clients. We should, and I said, if you have a strong core, like if you look at like a sports or exercise, right? If your core is strong, you can pivot and do a lot of different types of exercises. Yeah. And so I think that's the way, when I came in, even before, I've been here just a little over a year, so shorter than Richard has been at OneKey. But I think my approach is to look at everything, assess everything, and make sure you have a strong staff team. Make sure that they're anticipating the unexpected. Make sure that you have products, services, culture to serve members at the highest level possible. And so I think those things are very important. We do have the three-way agreement. So we have to have good relationships with the state association, the National Association of Realtors, and working to provide feedback and information, and also to reiterate and provide information to our members from the various sources. I think you have to have strong partnerships in the community, in other organizations, economic development agencies, for example, and make sure that you have many avenues to expand your message, to share your message, and to do everything possible to be as strong as possible in the good times, so that whether it's budgeting, whether it's operations, whether it's staffing, whether it's relationships, strengthening all of that all the time, because that's what makes you strong when you do have to pivot or when you do encounter something unexpected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Richard?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Lynda more. And it's a great analogy to talk about how we had to pivot during COVID and after COVID. Mm-hmm. When I first went to work for OneKey, first thing I did was create a strong team. I think we've got an exceptional team that we're continuing to grow. Because this is one change, and it's significant, but we're going to be dealing with more change. This is not the end. This is the beginning. And you always have to have a strong team in place. So, for example, there's been a lot of focus on the changes mandated by the settlement, but Anthony, is a OneKey participant, that we're about to transition 45,000 users on to one RESO compliant, real estate standards compliant platform. That's a big deal. And that involves a lot of change, a lot of moving the cheese for 45,000 people. So you always have to have a strong team in place. And that's, the knowledge base was not just created to address the settlement, it's created to address all of the issues that may affect the 45,000 participants and subscribers of OneKey. But it starts with a team. I couldn't agree with Lynda more. It really starts with a vision and a great team to implement your vision.
Right.
Can I add to that?
Sure, absolutely.
So I wanted to add also that, as far as culture, also our leadership. You really have to get your leadership to kind of change, because I think nonprofits in general operate more like social clubs, and really we need to operate like businesses. And that's part of what strengthens your core, and get your leadership to really think at 50,000 feet about the future and not about the little things and the weeds that are operational or inconsequential. And so I think that's another really important thing, to get your volunteer leadership to be on board with the fact that we need to be more nimble, more future proof, and really operate like a business, and to do the things, because sometimes that vision is there, but then the little things along the way become impediments because people aren't willing to change. And really, ethical leadership requires that you not only be ready to accept or embrace change, but to seek change and to stop thinking about the way that things were always done. And I think that's a big part of what engages members. And I think it's the feedback I'm getting from just the few things that I've changed since I've been here in this short period of time, is a great way, because when your members are engaged and your leadership is thinking in the right manner, you're going to be able to move forward more effectively than you ever thought.
Yeah, true. On the culture, you hit it on the head with pivoting and being open to change, and also not being stuck in your old ways and saying we've done this always in the past. So that's one big thing. But which kind of like I would like to go 3 more minutes on talk about the best practices that you think that broker owners, and realtors. So best practices for real estate professionals and best practices for broker owners. I would like to create that dichotomy there. What are some things that brokers and owners should be doing if there's a call to action? Imagine if you were to give a call to action, a 30-second call to action to a broker owner. This is where we need you. This is how we want you. This is what you need to be doing. What would that be?
From my perspective, set the tone. One thing I haven't talked about, and I think, in addition to cooperation, it is the equally important foundation of the MLS is data, the quality of data, the timeliness of data. The broker owner managers have to set the tone to their agents on the importance of getting that complete data into the MLS. Don't take shortcuts. And again, this also boils down to the consumer. I'm very visual, and with OneKey MLS, we have a way of if I've registered as part of as a consumer to any of the tools connected to the MLS through my agent, I'm notified as a consumer when a listing comes on the system that meet my search criteria. If there's not a photo connected to that listing, or it's a lousy photo, I'm not going to be interested. So the broker owner manager has to set the expectation and the tone, conveying to their agents, you know what? You don't want to go to the table with just half of the data or a couple of lousy pictures that you took on your iPhone. You want to make sure that you are going to represent that property as effectively as possible, because we know in this very challenging market that we've had for the last couple of years with such low inventory, first impressions are vital. So from my perspective, the broker owner managers need to set the tone. And in addition to what we call the accountability, they need to provide that training in-house using the resources from the association and from the MLS. Because oftentimes if they're getting an email from the association or from the MLS, it'll be delete, delete. If they're getting an email or a communication from their broker owner manager, they're going to read that.
Right.
So from the perspective of a food chain, that broker owner manager is vital to the success.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, the pop-ups are very important, but they minimize the pop-ups or read later, and then the question is, how come I did not know? You know? So call to action to all the brokers. Don't minimize your pop-ups. Read them, understand them, share them with your managers, have a meeting and make it a office meeting point so that everybody is fully informed. Lynda, going back to Hudson Gateway about the best practices, what do you think?
So to echo what Richard said about setting the tone, I think what we're saying is be the change, be part of the solution, and help us elevate professionalism, encourage your agents to be well informed, to be well educated, to position themselves as experts, as Richard said, this is a great opportunity to show your value in many ways, whether it's with market stats, whether it's with other information that the association provides to show your value. So make sure that your agents are well equipped with all of the tools and services that we provide. And also, I think, encourage them to get involved, to give feedback to the association, to see something. You don't have to wait to be part of a committee. You don't have to be part of the board to email me and say, I'm seeing this, what could we do to fix it? And you don't have to be, a contrarian or any of that. If you see something, then inform us, because sometimes we may not be aware of how it's impacting your business. But in general, I think, again, it's just be part of the solution and be that change that we need in the industry by supporting all of these things that help elevate professionalism.
Right, thank you. Richard, is OneKey MLS going to do the tech fair again this year? I know you have a lot of new tools, Kubicasa, DPR, and a lot of tools out there with MLS Touch, etc. What can our audience, which is realtors, expect from OneKey MLS with reference to future programming?
So great question, and because of the generosity of Lynda and the HGAR team, we are going to be at the HGAR Annual Member Day at the end of October, and we'll be offering a couple of different courses, one talking about all the products that we currently offer, also talking about some products that are going to be rolled out in 2025, and we're going to have another legal update from Mitch Skinner, who is legal counsel for OneKey MLS.
Excellent, excellent. Congratulations on a great Bronx County Day. It's the talk of the town right now, and coming hot off that event. Very successful, very nicely put together, very well participated by all of the audience and the elected officials. Lynda, what can our membership expect in the future with programming and things that are coming up that you really want to share with them?
So I think we want to elevate everything. And so we want to bring programming to the members that they actually seek and that they will be able to use to implement in their businesses, to inform their business decisions, and to be better realtors. We are looking at providing more programming beyond continuing education, but also continuing education, of course. This year, we're slightly tweaking our Member Day event, and we're having the annual meeting on Zoom prior to Member Day on October 28th. The annual meeting will be on October 22nd. We will be having the members approve the directors newly elected to the board, and we will also have some bylaw changes. But on Member Day, we hope to continue to elevate that conference and make it a power conference that is solely focused on the members and what they are looking for in a conference. So better accessibility to the exhibitor hall that is sold out, better access to the great programming that OneKey put forth last year. We had some kind of something scheduled at the same time that were competing with each other. And so we're partnering with OneKey to make sure that everyone has access to Mitch Skinner or to whatever session they find most important. We have Jared James coming to speak, so we're really excited about that. And we're looking forward also to providing more hybrid opportunities and more Zoom opportunities. We have a vast geographic footprint, and so we want to unify our members and give them all that type of access. And I agree, the Bronx Day was an amazing event. I think we're very fortunate to have a Bronx chapter along with all of the other chapters. It is a great part of HGAR that has a lot of potential and is it's sort of like a gateway to a lot of things that we can do in the future. So I'm looking forward to further unifying our chapters and providing value association-wide and really leveraging our leadership and our resources that I see in our membership to elevate that programming. We did a strat plan earlier this year that was informed by a member survey, and I think that really sheds light because sometimes whether it's leadership or the staff team, you're looking at it from your perspective. And I think now we're doing things in a more comprehensive, holistic manner and really saying I think from my past experience, when I was CEO at the Louisville Association of Realtors, there was a lot of like, oh, we're losing attendance or we're losing engagement. But when you provide value, you see that it's the value that brings people in. And so that's my focus, to just bring value and bring things that members actually want, to engage with them on their terms. I'll take this opportunity also to promote our member engagement profiles. So if any of our members are listening and you have not completed your member engagement profile, please do. That has taken the place of committee signups. That was something you championed when you were on executive committee when I first joined. And it really allows members to complete that information at any point in the year and to really allow us to know you and your interests, how you want to engage. You may not want to be on a work group or a committee, but you may want to attend a forum or fill out a survey or do a focus group. It gives us insight into your background so we can leverage you and your experience. And so I highly encourage all members to do that. And we are working with our member portal vendor to integrate those profiles so that you can access them and have them part of your member record. So we're really excited about that.
A real quick rabbit hole on the membership profiles. Folks, if you have not done it, please do it because this is your association. At the end of the day, and as Lynda said, they're going to take that and leverage as to how best you can fit in or how best your questions can be answered and how you can serve the association as a whole. So it's a two-way street. So when something comes to you, don't just minimize it, do it. Do the member engagement profiles right away. Okay, any closing thoughts, Lynda, Richard?
The only thing I would offer, Anthony, is we really benefit from having a great relationship. OneKey MLS is co-owned by the Long Island Board of Realtors and the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors. And I think Lynda would agree that the three organizations really enjoy a strong relationship that benefits all of our members. You're a past president of HGAR. You were part of that process that created OneKey MLS. But I think that it's to Lynda's credit that she is a strong advocate for OneKey, and I'm equally a strong cheerleader of the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors.
Thank you. Lynda?
And so I agree with that. And I think having Richard, he was CEO for 11 years, 12 years?
11 years.
11 years, but he was part of an administration that was 40 some years?
42 years.
41 years. And so coming in, and I find it very refreshing that Richard is a good leader, a welcoming leader, that I can ask him questions. A lot of times when I go to Richard, I'm telling him I want to change this, and he's like a cheerleader. He's not saying, why are you changing what I was doing? He's actually a great supporter. So I think I agree, a great relationship with LIBOR, with Richard, and I feel very inspired and empowered and fortunate to be able to work with Doreen at LIBOR and with Richard at OneKey. And I think he hit the nail on the head when he said we're committed to what's best for the members and best for the consumers and best for home ownership. And it's really refreshing, and I think it will make us very powerful going forward in showing our value, but also helping members show theirs.
Wonderful, wonderful. Folks, to our audience, we are blessed to have an association in an MLS that promotes our rights and promotes everything that a realtor world needs. So time to get involved, time to participate, and don't minimize, maximize. At the end of the day, we lead the way only if we know the way. So thank you very much.